playing A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo randomized. Usual. Man, you want me to come up with a topic? Topic. Well, I'm currently hopping off. To do site maintenance. Well, not hopping off, but taking a moment to do site maintenance. One of the websites I'm working on, I need to transfer a branch on the test site between two environments. So, let's see, moving D7 schema test from schema to search and refreshing data base to the company. So, the joys of... Am I seriously not signed in? The joys of doing site maintenance while not on camera. So... Please enjoy me talking and complaining about it without seeing anything. Which probably for the best, considering it's privileged information. Okay, that switched over. So, all modules. Let's see, what am I looking for? Search API. Solar search API. I'll get back to the game in a minute. Well, a good topic I would love to talk about is the security vulnerabilities that were present in AT and have not been fixed in 5G and the impacts they will have. Oddly enough, there is a vulnerability for 4G cold impact. And using that, they were able to exploit user equipment on the gateways, which is something that is expected to be mitigated when we go to standalone. As it stands at the moment, such vulnerabilities are still available because all 5G user equipment is also 4G user equipment. Which is pretty bad. What would be interesting if any of you were flies on the wall when I was complaining to one of my thesis advisors about the fact that we're still effectively running legacy equipment and trying to make it 5G. And tell you the truth, Dennis, the most recent Patreon podcast I did with Sneed this Sunday, I covered a little bit of that. What do I mean by impact? Just a moment, and I'll give you a white paper link for impact. Okay, I'll also DM you on Discord. I mean, we can do a voice call on Discord.
That works.
And it also shows up on stream.
It does?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I hear myself. Let me mute you on the stream. And also, let me change over to the sexy mic.
Yes, I'm willing to do voice calls in the middle.
Hey, does this sound better now?
Oh yeah.
All right, good. All right, yeah. So I think a good topic to talk about would be, and I'm gonna repeat it because I feel like, yeah. Anyway, a good topic would be the security vulnerabilities that were present in the LT era that are still present in 5G and haven't been touched on. I feel like that's a good topic point. Specifically, I know you sent me a white paper, and I will read it as we talk. But in the example of the impact vulnerability, can you give me like the short, brief version of exactly like what that is, and maybe like a real world scenario of where that can be used?
So the user equipment identifier for 4G devices is vulnerable to a known cipher attack because it's effectively DES 3, but with all three DES components being the same XOR. Which enables people who are committed enough to ping a tower and duplicate your equipment information on the network, and all networks are vulnerable to this issue.
So like, so can you give like let me think how to word this. Like, can you give an example of like specifically how this could be like used? Like if I was a perpetrator, right, and I wanted to attack a victim, let's just say the victim was company A. Can you give an example of like how I could use that and how widespread the impact would be when I do such a thing?
So with network slicing, there is the potential to subscribe to different slices and, you know, basically pay for them and have it be a lockout zone. Okay?
Okay.
Using this user equipment information, if you know the DNN information for the slice, and the slice authenticates based on user equipment, which is possible because of the UUID, which is associated with it. In theory, since you can mimic the information of a piece of user equipment, the security of slice isolation is obliterated, because some of the credentials that lock devices into the slice can be spoofed if you know how to do the XOR to copy user equipment. Luckily, we're past CDMA type connections where the phone doesn't need a SIM card to be registered. Or no, let me rephrase it. We use SIM cards, so the phone's CDMA ID is no longer usable for device identification.
Well, that's true for phones, but what about Internet of Things devices? Aren't there still Internet of Things devices on the network that are still using 1X and hence using CDMA?
Yes. That is.
So couldn't you just use one of those in favor of a phone, or no?
You could use one of those, but your mileage would be, your impact would be like greatly stifled, because what are you going to do if you're authenticating to the network as, say, a smart thermostat or industrial controller? They already have should already have predefined procedures and predefined responses to queries. The only thing you could do with that is increase the amount of data another customer is paying for by
So let me oh, sorry.
by flooding the network requests with meaningless queries.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. So I know you said one of the ways that we can resolve this specifically with 5G is once we move to a standalone core. However,
we also need new gateways.
Understood. But what I'd also like to know is, considering the fact that there's still going to be many things that are going to be relying on the LT network, is it possible in some fashion to basically patch this type of vulnerability on the LTE side as well?
No.
Or is it just not feasible because of how LTE works?
It's not feasible because of how LTE works.
Gotcha. Let me ask another question. As an everyday Joe Schmo, what's the likelihood of someone like myself being impacted by this vulnerability?
Probably negligible, especially if you're, using multiple cell phones. And since the devices are not authenticated to, or not like, man, that's a bad bounty. Like, since the devices are not connected to the network using code specifically, but SIM cards, it does lower the reach. But in the worst case scenario, you could find yourself unable to connect to your network using your phone because it was blacklisted or something.
Gotcha.
But your account information will not be compromised.
So, moving on to a somewhat different vulnerability, and this one definitely has lower reach because of the nature of how it's done. But are you familiar with basically where someone basically makes their own mini, we'll call it like their own like personal microcell, essentially, impersonating like an LTE network and getting people's phones to connect? Are you familiar with that vulnerability? I don't know the name for it, but basically you beam out like
am I familiar with it.
What's up?
Not only am I familiar with it, NTIA said I should stop testing it.
Oh.
Yeah.
NTIA. What does NTIA stand for? I'm sorry.
They're the FCC for Federal Government Spectrum.
Ah. Gotcha. Well,
I was doing the same thing on CBRS.
Yeah, so my question was in regards to that. That's a vulnerability I don't think 5G standalone core is going to be able to fix either.
Nope.
And I would also argue that even though the impact of scale is small, the impact in a given area is quite large. If, say, someone was just sitting at, like, say, a nice Starbucks in the middle of downtown Manhattan.
Oh, I was going to do this at DEF CON. And have everybody connect to their burner network through my puck.
So, my question is what can a person like myself do to mitigate the potential of becoming a victim to that type of security vulnerability?
Turn off auto connect to open Wi-Fi, and turn off network roaming automatically. So if you're in an area where you can roam, your phone will notify you that you can roam. And
open Wi-Fi I knew, but can you elaborate on how turning off the roaming actually?
So for the CDMA example, I could say I could be broadcasting as CDMA on AT&T.
Right.
And everybody on AT&T would go, oh, this is a higher signal. No, not CDMA. CBRS. This is a stronger signal. And then connect to that because I am distributing my call sign saying, hey, all AT&T connect to me.
So, something that I want to clarify, and maybe this is just my naivety, but I thought that in the domestic U.S., phones would only roam when not in an area where there is native coverage.
Well,
so,
I can mimic native coverage, but it's still considered roaming because it's a third-party network operator.
Got you.
I have Medardo in chat saying, is it our, like, pineapple popping up type stuff, what law enforcement does? And they use those big vans with antennas. That's actually slightly different. Those big antennas are listening into conversations not over a network, but like free-to-air conversations.
Hey, let me ask you something else real quick, Pete.
Yep.
Once we get the full variety and flavors of 5G, including network splicing and standalone and all that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Would it be possible to incorporate a piece of sliced spectrum that is 100% encrypted?
Yeah.
And if that happened, would that help to reduce or mitigate many of the common vulnerabilities that exist today?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think the likelihood would be that we actually get that?
Well, I've an outline for the changes to specifications required listed in my master's thesis. So, if I'm lucky enough to deploy it, we got it.
Nice. Let me ask you something else, Pete.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you saw, but you remember a couple years back, the government was freaking out about Huawei and getting all that Huawei equipment removed out of networks, specifically impacting more regional providers.
Oh, yeah.
Did you see the equipment that is being proposed to be used as the replacement by these providers by chance? Did you read the article recently?
No, I tell you the truth, with that Huawei situation, I've always been a little disappointed that I have not been able to get that into a lab and actually go through all their firmware.
Well, the reason why I was asking if you had the opportunity is because the equipment that's being used to replace it is produced by ZTE.
That's just as bad.
I know. That's why I found it hilarious.
They're also, what is it, 35% owned by the party?
Yeah, they're based in Shenzhen,
Yep.
which is still China. So it's like,
and they're a multinational corporation, so at least 30% of their business has to have CCP personnel.
yeah. So I was going to first ask, one, do you trust ZT-based equipment? And then I was going to ask as a follow-up question, what are your thoughts on the actual equipment itself that ZT is dishing out?
Well, first off, I don't trust any equipment that I do not have the ability to, dump into a lab.
Okay.
Plain and simple. If I cannot test the equipment, I'm not gonna vouch for it one way or another.
Understood.
What was the other question?
Just simply, what were your thoughts on the equipment itself from like a specification standpoint, like where it stacks up against the established players like, say, Nokia, Ericsson, Samsung?
You're not going to get the Ericsson level of connection. I have alternative reality chiming in saying from rock to the hard plays, Huawei to ZTE. Yep. And quite frankly, I trust Huawei equipment, the Huawei antennas, more than I do the ZTE antennas.
I agree. I just wanted to hear your personal thoughts because, well, even though we agree on a lot of things, we also sometimes disagree on things, which is why I always like to hear your well thought out thoughts.
Yep. And hopefully this lines up as well. It's a stupid decision to replace Huawei with ZTE due to the fact that they both have the same vulnerability.
So, Pete, slightly off-related topic, in case I haven't told you, but there is two things that have happened that have been good, both of which are kind of like unicorns. Do you want to take a guess of what they are before I say?
T-Mobile has released 5G radios in LA.
These are specific to Pittsburgh, to give you a hint.
Huh.
Alright, the first one is I spotted a maintenance truck from Verizon like about a week ago. That was like seeing a unicorn. And
they're updating your terrible fiber connection?
No, that's the thing. It's no longer terrible. I'm actually getting my speeds, and I'm getting stable ping times.
Interesting.
Right? And here's the more interesting part. After that happened, I went on the Verizon website. They actually updated the speed tiers that were offered. So now it's 300 by 300, 500 by 500 and a gig. So for about a week now, I've had a stable connection, which is fantastic.
That's a unicorn.
Yeah, I know. The second thing that I was going to tell you, and I sent the picture over to Sneed to confirm, as well as Carlos, but about a hop, skip, and away from my house, there is a ton of small cells that are being deployed by Crown Castle for Verizon.
Nice.
But take a guess what kind of small cells they are.
Nokia.
Yes, and take a guess of what bands there are on the small cells.
You're not getting N77 on there, are you?
Nope. I'm not getting millimeter wave either. They are band 66, band 13.
Damn.
Yeah, there's about 5 or 6 of them. It's the same ones that AT&T uses. I'll send you a picture later. But yeah. Also, on the topic of small cells, this is another unicorn. Guess who I saw had a small cell deployed?
T-Mobile.
Yep. And guess what bands were on that small cell?
71, 66, 2, and 12.
No, it was a band 66 only small cell.
Huh.
Right? Right?
66?
66 only.
What?
Right?
Them do them.
What's up?
Them do them.
Yep. Yeah, it was 20 megahertz of band 66. That was it.
Man.
Yeah, I was talking to Sneed, and we're assuming that it's a combination of equipment shortages, and in the case of Verizon, they specifically opted to do the LTE-based stuff first because the area probably has more people connecting based over LTE. That was the assumption.
Yeah.
So the assumption is basically later upgrades, they'll put the UW on the forced macros that are actually surrounding said area, and then it'll just leave those there to keep the coverage gaps kind of filled in with the LTE and offload traffic. But the thing that's more interesting, outside of the two things, or the couple of things I've been saying, is that despite the fact that Verizon is putting small cells in Pittsburgh, which is fantastic, no small cells are actually making their way into the inner city. The inner city, the only carrier that has small cells on any meaningful level is AT&T.
Really?
Yes. The only small, quote-unquote, small cells, I'm using quotation marks when I say that, in Pittsburgh are Verizon's millimeter waves, but I use quotation marks on small cells because most of their millimeter wave sites are actually rooftop mounts.
Which aren't exactly small cells.
Right, but that's why I use quotation marks.
Makes sense.
You can't see me quotating, but yeah. You know, Pete, you haven't texted me since I've came back from Vegas.
I don't text people that often. I typically need something to say.
Really? I feel like there's a million things that you could say to me.
Yo, what up?
I mean, you can call me a dirty socialist.
Why would I do that?
I don't know.
By the way, Alternative Reality in my chat here just said, I just had an AT&T crews go through my neighborhood getting ready to deploy fiber. He's excited about getting fiber in his house in the near future.
Well, I'll tell you right now,
That's badass.
I was gonna say, I'll tell you right now, even shitty fiber is still good. Do not be depressed if it takes 6 months for AT&T to make it work like it took Verizon, because it'll all be worth it in the end.
Also remember, fiber is good, be it dietary or internet. You know, just PSA out there.
Pete, it's been so long since I texted you that I'm actually having a hard time finding you in my recent conversations. That's how long it's been, Pete.
It's only been two and a half weeks.
And yet I've talked to so many people that you're so far down and that I had to really scroll for it.
Tell you the truth, most of my conversations revolve around work.
Well, Pete, I sent you a few images. Two of of the small cells that I mentioned that were of Verizon from the Nokia. I also sent you a C-band speed test that's in like the bumfuck middle of Egypt, where one of my buddies is at. We're trying to get him hooked up with the fixed wireless because I want you to be impressed by the C-band performance that you can't have in Denver.
At least not yet. What's that speed test of with the 622 by 110?
That's Verizon C-band.
Nice.
60 megahertz. That's 60 megahertz of spectrum coming in clutch.
Oh, yeah. So, I have a question for you, Alternative Reality. What type of plans are you expecting in your area?
Before he answers, I'm going to make a guess that it's 300 by 300, 500 by 500, and then gig symmetrical. I'm going to assume that 5 gig and 2 gig don't get offered immediately. That's my guess.
Yeah.
Speaking of multi-gig, by the way, did you see Verizon went live with 2 gig symmetrical in New York?
Nice. Two gig symmetrical in New York.
Specifically 2,048 megabits per second down and 2,048 megabits per second up.
Cool. Now, hopefully they provide a router or a router with a LAN port for that.
They are. The equipment that they're providing actually has a 10 gig port on it.
Nice. $10 gig.
And yeah, 10 gig.
Damn.
Yeah.
It's a heck of a port for 2 gig.
I know. So Pete.
Yeah.
Take a guess how much it costs for the 2 gig from Verizon.
$149.95.
Nope, 120.
Hey, it was close.
And do you remember how much AT&T is charging?
Nope. Let's go 130.
I believe it was something like that, but it's a promo price. This is no promo price. It's just 120 out the rip.
Well, what do you expect? It's AT&T, king of promo pricing.
Actually, that's cable companies that are king of promo prices. Let's get that right.
I remember DirecTV. After that first year, we triple your price.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Bend you
yeah.
over backwards.
And then
here, Pete, I'll share you the Reddit post on Discord here.
Let's see. There is fiber that's been available 2 blocks away for years, and I saw them go all the way up to 5 gigs. So, well, hopefully, alternative reality are in the same boat. Hey, 500 symmetrical alternative reality is, nothing to shake a stick at.
Yeah, so Bearded Dragon, I just also sent you a follow-up message. It's the PDF of the router's user manual that they're sending out. The router has a 10 gig port, and then the rest of the Ethernet ports are 2.5 gigabit. So there's three 2.5 gigabit ports, a 10 gigabit port for the LAN, as well as a 10 gigabit port for the WAN.
Nice.
It is actually arguably, well, it's not better than my Ubiquiti Dream Stream Pro because I already have stuff. But honestly, for a consumer router or a consumer gateway, that is
consumer router.
Yeah, that is very good. And it gets better. It gets better, man. It's tri-band. It has 2.4 gigahertz, 5 gigahertz, and it has 6 gigahertz. So it's Wi-Fi 6E capable. All of them have 4x4 MIMO. So the router itself is actually better than my Ubiquiti access points because my access points are just normal Wi-Fi 6.
Nice. Now,
and that is free. That is free. It comes included. I'm gonna totally see about getting upgrade to it. And there's one more thing I want to say, and then I'll let you talk. One other thing that's really exciting about it is that it actually has a cell phone modem baked into it as well. So theoretically, it could be used as a backup. Like if you're in an area with like C-band, you can use it as a backup for when Fios goes down. Now go ahead, Pete.
Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say, but tri-band is nice, but to me, I don't 100% know if commercial equipment, consumer equipment is particularly set up for the 6E yet.
It's not, but it's nice that it's there, considering that Verizon, unlike Comcast, does not tend to do refreshes on their equipment as often. So I'm imagining that this will probably have to last for I'm gonna say 5 years before Verizon even thinks about upgrading it again.
Hey, that just means it keeps getting cheaper. And,
you say that, but not actually.
Well, logically, if you're using the same thing for 5 years over time, parts become cheaper.
Cheaper for Verizon to make and sell, yes. Cheaper to the consumer, no.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna go there.
One thing that's also worth mentioning that I also find incredibly impressive about the new gateway is it actually supports a later revision of Mocha. So you can actually get 2.5 gigabit per second LAN speeds over coax with it.
Nice.
And that's very, very useful considering the amount of homes that don't have Ethernet ran to the various rooms within the household.
Yep. I know my house doesn't, but
So yeah, Verizon's getting a big round of applause after 6 months of me shitting on them. They're getting big rounds of applause for me for actually doing something competently.
Good. And alternative reality, I'm actually a little curious. You have a VPN that caps at 500 megs a second. And what's your definition of overbuilt? Are you familiar with what overbuilt could mean, Dennis?
It depends on the term, but when I think of overbuild, I think of when an ISP lays down more fiber than it's necessary for a run and leaves it as dark fiber for future possible connections, whether that be for business use cases, node additions, or small cells connections, or whatever else in the future.
Or,
that's what overbuild stands for.
How about just upgrading the more bandwidth than I could practically use? I have more bandwidth than I can practically use as a symmetrical gig, and I'm not complaining.
I also have gig and have more bandwidth than I can realistically use, and I'm not complaining because honestly, there's 3 things that are worth mentioning. 1 is that no one ever complains about their speed being too fast. 2 is that generally speaking, at some point in the future, bandwidth needs will increase to a point. And 3, when there are those higher speed options like the 5 gigs and the 2 gigs of the world, tends to mean that lower tier plans usually get faster speeds for reduced costs. So all wins, even if I'm not one of the people that would be willing to pay for the 5 gig.
Hey, I have the option for 10, and I'm not willing to pay $250 a month for my EP.
Exactly, but the fact that it's there is good.
Oh, yeah.
I will just say, by the way, though, seriously, the amount of stress that has been removed from my life now that I actually have reliable internet is a fantastic thing.
I'm actually surprised they upgraded your internet.
Upgrading is a strong word. I wouldn't really call it upgrading, more like fixing a problem. Because it's not like I got something more than what I had. I'm just finally getting what I was paying for.
We need T-Mobile to update their N41 outside of Phoenix for Bedardo here in chat. So he can actually get what he's paying for.
I'm sorry, but I have zero faith in T-Mobile's home internet product. If there's another option that's for fixed wireless like Verizon, I would pick that every single time over T-Mobile's.
Oh yeah.
I tested it in Longmont, Pete, and that was best case scenario for T-Mobile, and it was pretty garbage.
Yep.
All the issues that I came in with expecting were all issues that cropped up.
What were you expecting here?
Well, I mean, I said it before, but latency being an issue,
Oh yeah.
jitter being an issue, and then packet loss was not one that necessarily came to the top of my mind, but I thought of it could be there, and it was an issue.
Yep.
And then expanding upon that.